Welcome. I'm Dr. Layla Rack. I'm the Executive Managing Director of Strategic Advisory Group, a division of ALHI. I'm going to moderate today's session, and I'm delighted that we have three new, they're not new to Strategic Advisory Group, but new to you, the first time on the podcast. And so let me tell you just a tad about them, and then they'll talk more. I want you to meet Neen James, who I describe as a ball of energy with an incredible gift for making her clients better. Karen Richardson, who is, in my estimation, one of the smartest people about one of the biggest issues, and that is all things talent. And finally, we have our own data guru, who many of you I'm sure know, Armine Terezin. And Armine knows so much that can help your sales team and your operational team be far more effective. So I'm going to begin this series by saying, can you believe it's September? Because I can't. I mean, I was at a meeting today and I had to write the date down, and I thought, I have no idea what happened to June and July, but that's a whole nother story. I am delighted that so many members have opened our podcast that we're bringing to you on a quarterly basis. So after you watch today's session, if you have any questions, if you want to connect with an advisor, just contact me. My email address is my first name, Layla, Lalia, at alhi.com. So we're going to begin, and what you're going to see is our advisors providing you with expertise. And I find that is so exciting because it's based not just in knowledge, experience, and ideas. And I like the three stool of our advisors. So to begin, I'm going to ask each advisor to introduce themselves, discuss their expertise briefly because they do have very deep expertise, and perhaps provide an interesting fact about themselves as both advisors and consultants. And so I'm going to offer my interesting fact. I love patterns. I see them when I'm dealing with a challenge. I see how to help my clients deal with their challenge through patterns. I have an ability then to take that pattern and make it practical and useful. So that's mine. And Neen, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. And I'm going to tell you why. Neen was our first advisor. And so after all this time, I think it's right to begin with you, Neen James. It's yours.
Thank you. What a privilege to be in service in such phenomenal company. It's a privilege to be part of the Strategic Advisory Group. And if you're working out the accent, I hail from Sydney, Australia. I am also an American citizen. As a confidant to a lot of CEOs of luxury and legacy brands, what I'm known for is my ability to help drive revenue. My body of work is around how do you increase mind share, which is all of the attention work that I do, and how do you increase market share, which is a lot of the luxury leadership work that I do. And so whether it is the confidant working one-on-one with the CEO and their team, or whether it is a keynote speaker at the events, I have the only luxury mindset proprietary study in the world, the only one of its kind, which I love. And like you, Layla, you think in patterns. What's unique about me, I think, is I think in contextual models. So when people are, and you've seen me do this on stage, when people are sharing information with me, I have this ability to capture very complex ideas and then create a visual model for them. Some of you have seen me do it on stage. I've done it at ALHI events and for some of our members and clients as well. And so I think, Layla, that's where I think one of the reasons we get on so well is we can identify those things together. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you very much. And so now I'm going to turn to Karen Richardson. And Karen, you just began.
I shall. Well, thank you for the introduction. And I don't know about the smart part, so we're just going to leave that off to the side. But talent definitely is where I spend my time, energy, and truly what gives me energy is talking about talent, working with individuals and collectives about talent, everything from new leader integration, being to the company or to the role, to helping teams be better, because everybody individually can be better, but collectively, certainly that's the case as well. And today I'll talk about employee experience because I do spend a lot of my time with employee experience. And I would probably say the way I think is not in patterns or contextualization, but I think in numbers. My background in education is finance. And so I bring that, I'll say, twist to human resources because a lot of the human patterns come from data. And that's where, that's where my head goes to.
Well, that should be a real comfort to many of our members because we often find that human resources, and I'm not disparaging anyone. I don't want people to think.
I hope not.
Well, no, I'm not. But
kidding.
it's rare to hear a leader in the talent field talk about how data and numbers is what really feeds their expertise. So kudos to you. Good to see you, by the way.
Likewise.
Our third and final advisor today is someone I am so proud to have known for, gosh, more than a decade. And she is far younger than I am. So she was really young when I met her. And she's not old now. I'm not saying that. But Armine, I'm going to give it to you to close this segment.
Thank you, Layla. I still feel just as young as the day we met. I am Armine. I am Armine Terzian. I am the Vice President of Sales Operations and Client Optimization here at ALHI. What does that mean? What's my expertise? I really focus on how do we get our sales team to be as efficient as possible in terms of, do they have the right do we have the right technologies in place, the right processes in place to help deliver ultimately results to our members and our clients. I work very much in data. So Karen, when it comes to numbers and data, I think we definitely make a connection there. My expertise is taking really complex challenges, and it could be data management, my favorite topic, data hygiene, and taking some of these, things that tend to be on the back of everyone's minds of things I'd like to get to, but have a really big impact on your day-to-day if you don't get to that day where you clean up your data and you organize and make sure that you have the information you need to make the best financial decisions for your organization. And for my kind of fun fact is I think in buckets. What I mean by that is when I look at a problem or when I'm trying to fix a solution in a system, for me, what I find works best is you take that complex problem and break it up into phases and make it more bite-sized. So I'd like to put things in categories and buckets essentially, and then build upon it. So my most famous saying, I think everyone at ALHI is probably tired of hearing me say, one less click. That is my goal. And that's how I look at organizations. That's how I look at structure of systems. What can I do as a system administrator that's going to provide one less click in the system? How can I save you one extra step? And that's where those buckets and really steps help elevate. And they add up quickly when you put them in buckets. Not as overwhelming.
So if you think about the four of us, and I'm going to stick with you, Armine, but this is not your question. When you think about the four of us, we said we think in models, we think in numbers and data, we think in patterns, and we ended with buckets. So we have the title of our book, folks, okay? Right there you go.
Love it.
So, I started by saying, I don't know where most of the year went. And then I was thinking, my Lord, there are 5 days left in this quarter, 5 from where we sit right now. So as we approach the close of the quarter, Armine, what currently occupies your clients' thoughts? And what I want to say then, Neen and Karen jump right in with her. She's finished, jump right in. We'll just stay with that question.
I see my clients as our members that we serve here at ALHI. And top of everyone's mind right now is coming out of Q3 is how do we make sure we're set up for success in 25? It's reviewing budgets, it's reviewing, finances, it's reviewing what potential revenue opportunities do we have. There were a lot of, even with 3 quarters almost down in 2024, it acted very differently from a trend perspective in the group space. So it's really, we're taking a lot of pause to see how is this different from last year. 23 and 22 were a different experience. 24 is acting a lot like 2019. So there's a lot to take out of from a production and booking window timeline. So it's,
And Armine, can you say a little bit more about that? What does that mean that it's like 19?
Yes, thank you. Great question. For example, we're seeing great kind of comeback of association business. Corporate came back post-COVID a lot sooner than associations did. Short-term business and in the year for the year, when we're looking at what we're booking this year, it's a little bit different in that in 22 and 23, we had a lot of availability. We also had a lot of demand for in the year for the year business. It's not the case as much in 24. There still is some, and it's been great, but it's not to the levels that we originally anticipated budgeting for 2024. Just in the industry overall is just what I'm hearing from the clients and members I serve. So it's taking a pause to see what is 25 going to look like, right? It's the crystal ball of what can the data show us? What can our booking patterns show us to see, how do we plan for the year ahead and make sure we're ready to serve the clients and groups ahead.
Who's up?
I'll go next. First of all, I'll say thank you, Armine, because that was very educational for me. Of course, I'm talking to my clients about talent because that's the space I live in. And what I would say is really probably 3 main things that people are thinking about with 3 quarters almost in the rearview mirror and looking forward to the end of this year in 25. And the first is employee burnout. There is concern across the board about employees and their ability to maintain the pace that they have been running at. I often say the treadmill is on high and it keeps speeding up, even though it's on high. And so one of the things people are talking about because of that burnout is upskilling and reskilling. So how can we help employees be, broader in their job or maybe work in a different role to give them a little bit of change, because often that will help with the burnout. And then flexible work. I think that, lots of headlines around CEOs requiring people to come back to work, other companies saying, no, we don't need to come back to work. So obviously a little different in these industries that we're talking about today, but outside, it is a big topic. All 3 of those fall under employee experience. And we can talk a little bit about that if we've got time, but those 3 are what my clients are mostly talking about.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think mine builds on what you're both saying. So when I'm working with my CEOs and the leadership teams, what we're really focused on is how do you finish strong in 24? So this 100-day sprint. And so that's what my focus is with a lot of my executive teams is we can't stop looking at what we want to do in 25, but we've got to finish 24 strong. And so when I'm working with the sales leadership teams, what we're really looking at is how do we maximize that top tier clientele? So how are we increasing the revenue from existing clients? Because I think that is some things that sometimes we overlook in our pursuit of attracting new clientele. We sometimes overlook existing clientele. And so that's a strategy that I've been working with many of my leadership teams on. And the second part of that in the last 100-day sprint is really paying attention to what matters for the individual within the organization, Karen, which builds on exactly what you're talking about employee experience. So many of our teams are outward focused on the clientele, and the great CEOs and their teams are very focused internally on the internal clients being their team members. So when it comes to really paying attention, it's paying attention to the health and well-being of the internal clients, but also looking at the external clients and making sure we're looking after them in the greatest way. One of the latest book that you all know that I've got called Exceptional Experiences. This new book is very much about providing those systems of elevation for people who are responsible for revenue. And that's not just about attracting the attention of, say, some existing clients, it's new clients as well. But then how do you convert them into advocates? So where I've been really focused with some of my clients is building these advocacy programs from 24 into 25. Because I think if we can have advocates, internal advocates being our team members, Karen, this is on the talent that you do, it's easier to attract great talent because they tell their friends about it. But also if we have our clients who are advocates, they become an extension of our marketing department. Therefore, they, and I'm talking advocates, not influencers. I see them as very different, not people who are paid to do it for us. But so that's the focus for my clients, is just this sprint last 100 days. How do you finish strong in 24, and all the different ways we can do that? Sometimes there's revenue that's there that we haven't even tapped into. So it's really just getting team members to go back and have a look for that.
I want to follow up with you for a minute, Neen, and then I've got a question for the other two, for Armine and for Karen, based upon what you said. But I want to go, I love how you say, how do we finish strong? And then you said something that, from my perspective, is so common sense, but yet it's not. And that is, I wrote it down, increase existing client revenue. So here's my question. When you say that to them, however you do, does anybody go, why aren't we doing that? Or duh, or we know that, but we forgot about it. And I understand there is so much change, so I'm not being critical. But when you said it, I thought, oh yeah.
Yeah, when I started my career, I was a little bank teller, and I had to get promoted to bank teller. It's not where I started, but when I was a bank teller, I remember our bank accountant, the person in charge, he said to us, it is easier to upsell an existing client than it is to attract a new client. It's actually cheaper to upsell an existing client. That has stuck with me my whole career. And so when I'm working with the sales team, it's often about revisiting conversations that we've had, but using more creative language to get attention, Lala. Instead of people just say, I'm just checking in. No one wants to be checked in with. That's the stupidest, craziest, worst email to send to people, because then you just become noise in someone's inbox. So it's getting creative about how do you capture attention of existing clients and remind them they're already in relationship with you. Maybe there's something else we can do for them. That's where it's been some focus. And it's surprising how much revenue is there.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's why when you said it, I thought, oh yeah.
Finish strong. See? Yeah. Leverage what we have. Leverage those clienteles that already love us.
I love it, I have to tell you. And Karen, I'm going to go to you next. And that is, you spoke about burnout. And I think it's dramatic what has happened in the workplace since COVID. And that could just be me, you know what I'm saying? But I also think there has been so much change, because work was always in person. I don't care what you did. I know there was virtual work. I'm not suggesting that, but the majority of us worked in person. And that, number one, these technologies we have. And so when you talk to, here's my question, Karen, when you talk to your clients about burnout, is there interest, acceptance, or do you get pushback? That's my question.
And I would say yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
Really, it depends on who you're talking to. But yes, there is a fair amount of pushback. And a lot of it has to do with, and Layla, you and I have had conversations about this, that we've used the term kind of old school a couple of times, that people are, senior leaders are more used to people being in the office. But the mentality has changed. People feel differently about work, about where work can be done, where work should be done. And I believe that listening to your employees is the number one way to understand, obviously, what they're thinking, but then making your plans from there. And whether you agree with them or not is almost immaterial, because it's what they think and feel. And therefore, your revenue streams are through your employees. So listen to them and act based on what they want and need, associated with your strategic plan, of course. But I'm getting a little off course, but we do have folks that absolutely believe that burnout is there and it's real. And we have folks that are, come on, people, put on your big girl and boy pants and do your job. We absolutely have people in that camp as well. But talking to them about the data and talking to them about what happens, the cost of losing an employee, the cost of an employee just sort of phoning it in and not giving you discretionary effort. If you help an employer understand the cost associated with it, they're much more willing to listen.
That's very interesting, because as you said that, I thought to myself, I was thinking about a person I call just suck it up buttercup, And I was thinking about that. And then when you said you again bring data and numbers, that in my mind is the best way to engage someone who just thinks it's work. I'm not into, and I tend to sometimes be a person who's not real touchy-feely, but I understand things have changed. And so I will talk to myself, but I also find there are times I do need someone to say to me, Layla, there is a loss of productivity here. You don't have to like it. And so are you finding, I know this is a tough question, so take it how you want. Are you finding you're having to do more of the, what I call the suck it up buttercup type, or are you finding leaders are being more accepting?
They are being more accepting when they hear the data, and it takes less. It takes only a couple of data points. Generally, in the first conversation, the light bulb will go on. Okay. What I will say is that 2 years ago, it was multiple data points over multiple conversations, because people were less willing to listen, thinking, oh, it's a phase, this will change, something else will be the flavor of the day. We are now 4 years outside of COVID, or within COVID. And, so people are like, yeah, I guess it is going to stick around, so I should pay attention.
Okay. One of the things we've found, if I can just add one point, Karen, and that is we've found when I've used the word pilot with my clientele, so one of my large media companies that I work with, we piloted different things based on what the team was telling us, based on the employee engagement results and conversations, to the point where we've landed that they're in Monday to Thursday and they work remote Friday. But it took quite a few pilots before we found that rhythm. And I feel like pilot as a language gives us permission to try different things with the teams. And the leaders who have the courage to say, let's try this out for 90 days or however long, and then make adjustments, the team are more open to that. So I feel like leaders have to be more brave to also be open to making adjustments as well when they do have the data points. And I've found working and coaching with my executives, if we can introduce the concept of a pilot, that seems to make a difference. And the team are more willing to listen then, because they give it a go.
Absolutely. I would agree. I'm seeing the same thing. And especially because when you're doing a pilot, you're using kind of part of an organization. And generally you can find a leader who is willing to be the brave soul versus, having to do it across the organization. Absolutely.
So it's very interesting what we're talking about relative to better productivity and quality productivity. And so that leads me back to Armine, if I could. And so I'm going to ask you something, Armine, you're not really prepared to talk about. But when you described how 23 is different from 24, how it's more like 19, and it struck me, and you said, they're thinking about setting themselves up for success in 2025. So you have 3 months. You're the leader. You're one of our clients, members. What's the one thing you think they should do in the next 3 months to set themselves up for success?
I'm gonna go back to my buckets. I don't think I can stick to one thing. There's a series of one things you can do. And if I could, before I answer, and I will answer, Layla, if I could go back to the conversation we were just having with what Neen shared and with Karen shared about the turnover and then, your existing customer. One of the most difficult things from a systems, putting on my system administrator hat for a moment, is keeping up with the changes. How do I continuously track as they were sharing in my head, even just with my ALHI hat, system administrator hat, I was thinking, gosh, are we always tracking as there's burnout and people are job change, making adjustments and re-looking at what they're working on or who they work for or what they do? How do we keep ahead of that? How do I make sure that my existing customer is still my existing customer, even if there's change within that organization? Do I have the right systems in place to track that, notify my team, or notify whoever needs to know? And when I measure the success of my existing customer, am I tracking that correctly and accurately? Are they still my existing customer? So kind of tying those two together, that's how I see systems and kind of what my expertise is how do you tie in that together using your data and making sure your data is as accurate as possible. That's actually something that I would recommend that we do. You have to go back into your history and not just the last year. It's hard to for a long time in hotel, and I worked in several hotel organizations where we looked at what did we do last year, how can we improve it this year, without really taking the time to pause and see what made us successful this year. What is going to be different that we had this year that we don't foresee having or experiencing? What's the new potential thing for the upcoming year ahead to make you successful? I think to take a real moment to pause and not just say, all right, well, we're going to do 3 to 5% better than we did the year before. And just taking the time to see, what does that 3 to 5% represent? Because it could potentially be more if we're asking ourselves the right questions. You could use your data to do that. You could use industry trends and data to kind of see how you're aligning with the rest of the industry. There's a lot of data points out there that talk about, from a hotel perspective, what we're seeing in the group space.
Maybe another thing to think about is to also not just about like, what do we want to continue to do? But one of the questions I often ask my clients is, what are we going to stop doing? Like, is there a segment of the market we're going to stop working with? Is there a clientele that you need to set free so that they can go work with someone else? Is there talent that it's time to set them free? They may have helped us get to this point in our organization, but is it time for them to move on as well? And I think too often we're being measured on what we start or continue, as opposed to there's not enough recognition. This is where I think systems are brilliant, to things to stop doing as well, whether it's processes, meetings, email, but especially around revenue, is just thinking, is that really a profitable type of event or activity that we're doing? And if so, great, then we look at it through a new set of data points. But if not, having that courage to set it free for the new year as well.
And that takes courage. I mean, you use the exact right word. And, in this day and age of what have you done for me today, not lately, today, it requires leaders with a greater backbone. And I find it interesting as we work, all of us, with our individual members or clients. I see more and more leaders having backbone. So, which thrills me to no end. What I want to ask the three of you, and I don't care who takes this, I don't care if you all take it, but one of the things inherently you've been talking about is you have to take time to think. Yet, because of burnout, who has time to think? And so, how are you thinking about that, helping a member, helping a client to really develop a different approach to looking at challenges and problems, stopping, starting, continuing, take any way you want. But I ask that of any one of you or all.
Maybe I'll start. And what I would say is that I spend a lot of time talking to my leaders about backbone, because that is really important. And, showing up in the way that others will emulate, because others are going to emulate you, good or bad. That's just the way it is. But, helping them understand that if they are blocking every Monday for 2 hours, no meetings, I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm going to think, I'm going to plan my week, reflect on the last week, whatever words you want to use. But having leaders just make a couple of small changes will make all the difference for themselves. And then that will, sort of flow into their organization. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. But it does take somebody with some starch to say, no, we aren't going to do that anymore, to Neen's original point, or we are going to stop and pause, also important. But if you are willing to take something off somebody's plate, they automatically have the time. So, no, Layla, you aren't going to do X anymore. And X takes Y number of hours. So in those hours, minutes, whatever the amount of time is, you're going to pause, think, reflect, think about next year, think about last year. That's the way I try to help my clients think about it.
There's three things I work with my executives, whether we're doing it one-on-one or we're working with their team. The first, to build on Karen's great idea, is I ask them to do a 15-minute strategic appointment with themselves every day, because they need to identify their top 3 not negotiable activities for today. And so what that allows them to do is that becomes those 3 strategic priorities become their decision filtering system throughout the day to enable that to get completed. So that's the first strategy. The second strategy is, because I am working with them one-on-one, it's having accountability to an objective third party. Karen does this as well, having that accountability plan with the people we're coaching. And one of the things that I think, the reason that I can be that confidant to so many executives, is because I can provide a very honest input, like Karen does and other advisors we have in our group. Layla, you do it as well for some of your clientele. So I think the second strategy is really having accountability, someone that makes you think bigger and makes you think harder than things you have in the past, someone who can be really objective. But the third strategy I found really interesting with some of my corporate clientele is having what we call a heads down day. And the heads down day in some of my clients, one of my media companies, one of my hospital clients, and we've done this as well with some hospitality, is having a meetings free day, meaning heads down, you can actually get work done. And so a heads down day, whatever it looks like on property, or, for some of our clients that are listening to this, it really needs to be an agreement so that people can get the actual work done. Because to Karen's point around burnout, people are starting their team or their Zoom calls at, say, 6:30, 7:30 in the morning. They're getting off at 6:30, 7 o'clock, at night. So they've been on camera, or they've been online, or they've been in meetings for 12 hours. And just then they get to actually start their real work. And then that bleeds into, sometimes all kinds of other things. And so I think we have to really help people to prioritize thinking in 15-minute increments so they can have complete thoughts. Because I don't know about any of you on this call, but sometimes it's even hard for us to have a complete thought. When I was writing the book Attention Pays, I learned from this study in California that it takes our brain on average 23 minutes to switch context. So if you think about that, the amount of things that our members, our clients, each other that we're doing on a daily basis, that's our brains are just exhausted. So I think it's a really important topic, Layla, and one we don't talk about enough.
Okay, lovely.
I love that. I didn't realize I exercised your third component because I try to keep I was like, oh man, look at me go. I try to keep one day a week where I don't have meetings unless I absolutely need to. And something that I, had to kind of and this is just my own, and I tell my team too, if you're doing your best critical thinking late at night when you're in bed, you're doing it wrong. You need to make sure that you're giving and that's my indicator when I do my self-assessment of, okay, it's then you haven't had your moment, you haven't been actively practicing what you preach. It's because, when I'm up late and I'm going through if it's my to-do list or doing my reel, how do we take, whatever project I'm working on to the next level. And if it's, at bedtime, then that's when I know I need to recalibrate myself. And that's what I share with my team too. And that's kind of my gauge. If you're doing it late at night, that's the only time you're doing it, then you're doing it wrong. So I try to keep one day. That's usually kind of going back to that working from home or remotely versus in office. I try to keep that work day to get stuff done the day I'm at home, because then I could kind of laser in, because when I'm in the office with our team, I want to make sure I give the team my attention as well, when we're in person together. But my email day or to get things done day, it tends to be when I'm working remotely, because I can focus differently than when I'm in the office.
Role model Armene.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's vital, I think, to any change and any success. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute. I want each of you to provide an article or book to our listeners that you use a lot, you're currently reading, that you think would be useful because of your expertise. So who would like to begin? Oh, Neen, you're holding up a book, but I don't know what it is. So talk.
I think it's public on the 8th of October. It's called Say What They Can't Unhear. And I was privileged to get a copy of this. It's 9 principles for transformational change. And the book is called Say What They Can't Unhear. Tamsin Webster is the author. What's amazing about this book is she has given language to help us get buy-in. And so many of our members, so many of our clients, we ourselves are responsible for change as leaders. And this book is, I think, one of the best I've ever read. And Tamsin Webster is the queen of message design. So she is a beautiful way of being able to articulate messaging. And she has been the executive producer of TEDx Cambridge, one of the most revered. So she's very well known in what she does. But I love that this book is small, it's simple. Every leader can actually, manage this book. And so I think this is one that you'll see me write and talk a lot more about. This has become compulsory reading for all the one-on-one work that I do with my executives. It's called Say What They Can't Unhear. It's brilliant.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read it. Who's next?
I'll go next. Mine really is, of course, is talent related. I mentioned employee experience. Retention is something that I work with a lot of clients on, and it's Never Lose an Employee Again, written by the same person that wrote Never Lose a Customer Again, which, bestseller for sure. And this is just a twist on that for retention of your employees. And what I like about it is that it is, it's a bit of a recipe. Here are things that you can do. Very factual, bite-sized chunks, not, you have to change the whole world, but little changes that you can make that make your employees feel more connected to you, and therefore, I call it stickiness. They're sticky with the company and they stick around. Neen, you seem to be familiar with it.
I do. Joey Coleman is the author of that book, of both books, Never Lose a Customer, Never Lose an Employee. I have hired Joey for my clientele to be able to speak for them, and he always gets astronomical results. For the audience loves him. His storytelling is brilliant. So Joey Coleman absolutely knows what he's talking about, is a brilliant storyteller. So yeah, that is a fantastic recommendation. And he's a great speaker for people who are looking for great speakers.
Agreed.
All right, I'm gonna share mine, but I'm gonna preface too, but I really truly mean it, and I would share it even if she wasn't on the call, but Attention Pays by Miss Neen James. Only because every time I pick it up, I pick up a different habit or a different, thought point. I'm like, oh, I haven't done that lately, or I need to start doing that, or, scheduling, coffee chats with my team. So it helps me, and it's not necessarily directly tied into, data and management. There's a lot of articles you could read about how you should set up your system, but it ultimately has to make the right decision for your organization. There's so many different things you could do with efficiency that's out there to read, but to me, it's how we connect with our team and how we pay attention to my internal customers and external clients, and I view my team in that way. So that's kind of mine.
You know what I like about all three, Neen, before you come in, is they're all three practical reads, and they're not tomes. So it demonstrates to those of you watching, listening, that our advisors are practical, experienced people. And you don't always get that. Oh, and do they have incredible creative minds? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, all that creativity is lost if you can't do something with it at your own business. So, Neen, you go right ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that I think as leaders, we have to stay current and relevant. So all of the books, and Amine, that's very generous of you. I think what we have to think about too is, as leaders, we have this responsibility to consume information, to share, and be able to highlight those articles or TED Talks or books or speakers, whatever it is. What I've loved about being part of the strategic advisory group is we all make each other better because we get together, we share best practices, we share what's going on for our clients. And I think that ultimately ALHI members benefit from that when we get to work with them too, because there is such a depth of expertise in the group, Layla, with everything that you're facilitating on our behalf. So I just want to add, with the books that we're recommending, plus two, some people don't like to actually read, they like to listen to the audio. And so I love it when the author is reading the audio. And that's one of the other things I love about Thames and Webster's book. And Amine, I read my own book. So if people don't want to sit and read a book because that feels like such a time commitment, listening while they're walking or driving, commuting, that can be really powerful way as a leader to stay current and relevant as well.
When I did my book, I was debating, Neen, whether to read it myself or, get a professional reader. And I decided, nah. And I have gotten more comments from people saying, I keeps hearing you in my head now. And that's frightening and positive, both. I'm going to offer I have an article. I make everybody I coach, I make C-suite executive teams read it. And it's called, Do You Play to Win or Do You Play to Lose? And it's a Harvard Business Review article. The author's last name is Grant, and she has also written a book called Focus. I love this article for various reasons. The very first one is, it is a different way to look at your team's attributes. And it allows you to see why, if you're a play to win, which I'm not going to explain, and your number and one of your very important people is a play not to lose, but they bug you, if you allow me that very sophisticated term, you might see that you're not as far apart as you think you are, but it's the way they discuss something that is so different than the way you do. And I found that it helps leaders break through stuff much easier when they're all recognizing who they are and then they hear who each other is. So I offer you that. In the time we have left, I'd like to do a bit of a lightning round question, and that is, and Armini, I'm going to start with you, because when I use the word one, you're never fond of that, and I'm going to use the word one again. What one piece of advice do you have to anybody who listens to this webcast? And it doesn't have to, again, I remind us all, our practicality is our strength. So Armini?
I will share a one. And it's what I always go back to is what is one less click, and whatever that means to you in your organization, what is one less click you can find and improve your system or your process or your team. What's one less thing, or in my, one less click that you can instill that impacts your team's day?
Wonderful, thank you. Karen?
I would use just one word, and that's listen. Of course, that means you probably have to ask, you probably have to act, but just the umbrella of listening. And that can be to your employees, to your peers, to your leader, to your customer. We all have our own points of view. And my point of view can't be wrong, but you have your point of view, which means your point of view can't be wrong. And that's very hard for individuals to kind of get past.
Absolutely. And Dean, I'm going to give you the last word on this webcast. Although I will close it up, but you know what I'm saying.
Challenge leaders to ask themselves how they could elevate everything. And the question that they could use is, how could I make this an exceptional experience right now? An exceptional experience for an existing client, an exceptional experience for a team member. But what could I do right now to make this an exceptional experience? That would be my challenge to people listening today.
And that is extraordinarily thoughtful. I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna say, first of all, I think it was very clear you saw the incredible individual expertise and knowledge that our advisors have. But I also am going to draw your attention to the fact that as you listen to the four of us talk, I hope you heard how much we could together or in a smaller group do things for your company, do things to advance your productivity. And so I say that simply because sometimes people don't know even how they can use an advisor if they haven't in the past. So I offer you that. I think what you've heard and seen is that we have the skills and ability to improve your bottom line. We have the skills and ability to better your sales team. And we have the skills and ability to make your team more effective and efficient through the one-click methodology, which I love. So if you think you have strategic challenges, they're long-standing and you're not happy with how you've addressed them, I encourage you to, as I said, contact me or anyone who was on today. If you want information on them, just go to our website, ALHI.com, and look for Strategic Advisory Group. So I'm really excited to announce a brand new product that we at Strategic Advisory Group are bringing forward. And that is a series of webcasts next year. There will be 8 of them. On each webcast, it will be me, myself, and one advisor. And they're going to dig down into a topic. And there are 2 things I love about this. One, it will be extraordinarily focused, and you will know in advance what the focus is. And 2, you will be able to be live with that advisor and ask questions. Now, we'll also provide that webcast in a taped fashion. So I'm saying pay attention to your emails, even though you get a lot of them, but we're going to offer a subscription series to this. It will likely begin in March. and extend through November of 2025. So I hope you will join us for that. And I want to thank you for listening. I do want you to know that we will have one more roundtable in December, the fourth quarter, the close of the year. And it is likely you will hear from every advisor at that time to be able to talk about what's on the horizon, even though we're very close to 25. What should you be aware of? How are you going to make your employees more effective without burning them all off, for an example? So again, we would love to hear from you. And I do hope that the third quarter has found you well and that you are accomplishing the business goals you want. I thank all three of you, and I appreciate that you are here.
Thank you.
Thank you.